I was gone away from my family for 5 years being in the military, and I hated that. I missed weddings, I missed cousins having kids, I missed funerals, which is probably the hardest one.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. All right, today we are joined by Typo, a former Marine and a member of the most ironically named branch of the military, and that is Marine Intelligence. Typo, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Kind of give the listener an overview of your time in the service.
Okay, so I joined in 2012, right out of high school, and then I went to San Diego, California for boot camp. Got to do that. Boot camp's a weird experience. It's kind of like the best way I've heard it explained is like the funniest place that you can't laugh, because there's just so many like wild scenarios that you never really expect to ever see in your life, and it's all to like break you down. I mean, you lose all your freedom there, and then they try to build you back up to make you the warrior that you're supposed to be.
Right.
So after that, I went to Marine combat training, and that's where pogues or anyone that's not in infantry, they because infantry will go to SOI, and then all the other like pogue or non infantry MOSs will go to a Marine Corps training, which is just a much smaller crash course version of SOI. So that was about a month long. I did that in Camp Pendleton, California. And then after that, I went to Intel school in Dam Neck, Virginia. It's a Navy base right off Virginia Beach. And that was probably one of the weirdest times of my Marine Corps experience, because I got there and I don't know why exactly. I never really got explained this, but there was only like 5 or 6 platoon cycles, and they had like, I don't even know, at one time like 500 kids, and they had them in what was called MAT platoon, which stands for Marines Awaiting Training. So I was in this MAT platoon and basically doing nothing every day for 5 months. And then when I tell you doing nothing, I legit mean we would go to a room, an auditorium, and sit there and do nothing, because they didn't know what else to do with us, because we're all just waiting to go pick up into our next training cycle. And yeah, that was really weird. I mean, they would have a bunch of working parties, which is just basically like random groups they take, and they'll force us to go do cleaning or whatever needs to be done. So I did that for like 5 months. Luckily, I got recruiter's assistance, so I got to go home, and then that's when, for like a month, I got to help out my recruiter to recruit kids from high schools. And so I did that for like a month, and I went back, and then I picked up my cycle, and I finally started my Intel school. That was pretty weird. It was just kind of that I never really. Now I always like, growing up, I was always like fascinated with the military and like movies and military stuff, and
Sure.
And like everyone in like, a lot of people in my family served, so that was always interesting to me. But then the Intel side was like, it was all studying like the enemy, and I got really into that because it was like learning their weapon systems, how they operate, just breaking down the different like battlefields, and you just find the best way that you think the enemy might approach, what their most dangerous course of most dangerous course of action might be, their most likely course of action might be. study. I mean, that was like, and then I got somewhat experience to like classified stuff. It sounds cool if you're not in the military. It sounds like it's like, oh man, this guy knows like secrets and stuff. And a lot of it,
Right.
honestly, is it's typically just stuff that. So there's top secret, and that's what intel guys get. And so top secret is methods. So it's the methods of how they collect this information.
Oh, okay.
So what?
Sure.
Yeah. So that the only reason like people need to know how they're collected is if you're actually working with those type of assets and stuff like that. So and then the secret information is the information that's gathered from those top secret assets. And that's how it gets down to like level of secret. But a lot of the stuff, I mean, honestly, like a lot of it you can literally find on Google.
Right.
And they'll label it secret, and then but I mean, you could find it on Google a lot of times. There is some stuff like typically, like if it's someone's name or someone like that, they'll keep it as classified level for their own protection in a sense. But yeah, I got exposed to a bunch of different stuff like that when I was going to the Intel school. And then finally, I got orders at the end. I graduated. I was like mid tier dude, and at least for us, what you got to pick what you wanted, if based on like how high you were in the class. So what was available, you got to pick, and there was like 30 of us or something like that, and I was like 17. And my time came, and I picked Camp Pendleton, California, and I got it, and I was like, oh hell's yeah, dude, I'm going to Camp Pendleton, and a lot of people in the Marine Corps, that's like probably one of the best bases you can get
Hmm.
on in the Marine Corps. That's generally the consensus for most people in the Marine Corps. So I got what I thought was the best base in the Marine Corps. And then the next day I came back and they told me my orders were invalid. And I was like, oh, they're like, they actually don't exist. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. So, and they're like, you get to pick what's left. And like my three options were Okinawa, Japan, or Okinawa, Japan. So
uh.
yeah, it was a tough choice, and I don't. I mean, there was different units, so I got to pick what different type of unit I went to, but I ended up choosing like a logistics group, I guess, part of, and then under CLR 37, and that was on Camp Kinser in Okinawa, Japan, and I was there for probably 2 years. So that was really cool. That was probably actually my favorite time. It's weird. It's like my favorite time, but also no, it was probably my favorite time in the military, only
Hmm.
because like it was cool being like in a different country. I mean, it was on an island, and and we had a really weird dynamic in our unit there. People like I don't know, it was just a weird dynamic, not normal for like most military situations, where like you kind of need to respect the rank, fall in line, and whatever the higher rank in that unit says goes.
Hmm.
But this unit that I was at kind of operated differently, where like there was so many like just younger enlisted guys that were in higher billets to fill, and in the military, billet outseeds rank. So there was just a couple occasions and weird times where people that were like kind of like corporal in a billet above a like sergeant, and it's
Hmm.
just like what the fuck is going on here. And you kind of need to, and when you're in those situations at a younger rank in the military, you kind of need to like put your foot down sometimes with people that are higher ranks than you. And it was just kind of a weird dynamic when I was there. I ended up being in an engineer battalion, Ninth ESB, and that's actually where I met Luke. That was my buddy, and I met a bunch of different guys there, but that's when me and Luke first met. And I mean, we were just drinking buddies. That's kind of how we all started. And at the time too, I mean, it's really weird in the military. At the time, me and Luke were so politically different that it was just weird that we were friends. Because I came from like, I mean, more of a Lutheran family from a small town, country area, and Luke came from the city, and he had two moms, and it was just weird. It was
Right.
just a
Right.
weird friendship we had, but we just enjoyed drinking and hanging out and being stupid together. So that's kind of how we met. And then After that, I and that's when I got to go to South Korea, and I just want to point that out real quick. That was probably my favorite time in the military was in South Korea, and that I didn't know this, but you know that song Gundam Style?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's actually yeah, that's
Who
actually
doesn't?
a district in South Korea or Seoul actually,
Huh.
and it's the party district, and that's why the song's like going Gundam style because it's like going to the party district in Seoul,
Oh,
and I
okay.
got to go there and I see why they call it that. It was pretty
Right.
fun. There was a lot going on there.
The song
Um,
match the place.
yes, for sure. And that's
Hmm.
honestly like probably the first and only time in Korea, or at least the build up to Korea, where I got to actually mess with like actually like involved in like a military strategy. And because the whole training in South Korea or going to South Korea, I forgot what the fucking um,
Brilliant
acronym is.
spear or something.
Yeah, something like that.
some
Yeah,
some
something weird.
exercise.
Yes, and but whatever it was, we got to work with the Korean Marines. That was kind of cool. But the build up to it was really the best part for me, just because it was like I got to be in the rooms where they're planning how to basically, their strategy for like however if a war between South Korea, North Korea, and the U.S. ever happened, like what are
Mm.
they going to expect? How would we like involve ourselves militarily? And that was just really cool to be there for like that kind of strategic level of planning and learning all about North Korea. And I mean, I never, it's kind of weird because I never learned much about like their atrocities. It was only like their military. I mean, we only focused on their military and
Right.
like the command and control and like how like that's all we cared about. So like the kind of the politics over there is it was always weird to me, and like I had to kind of keep involved with it. Now like there was like the one point in time when Thailand had this like military coup that happened, and we're like monitoring it, and I was like, oh crap, that was crazy. And that's when I was like actually started getting like pay attention to foreign politics, and that's actually kind of what got me involved in like politics today in like our own country,
Sure.
because I was studying so much about other countries. And then after that I went to a first tank battalion, which is funny. It's in 29 Palms, California. And the funny thing about it is the unit actually doesn't even exist anymore. It's gone. The Marine Corps
Right.
doesn't have tanks anymore. So like I guess I was like one of the last few to ever be at that unit. And it's understandable. Like I mean, we just don't use tanks in today's warfare today,
Right.
and like what the military does
Well,
and all
especially what
that.
the
But
Marines do. I mean,
yeah, for
you're
sure. And then
maybe the Army, but your mission a little different.
yeah, and I think that's what the idea is too. The Marine Corps, at least when I was leaving, the Marine Corps is trying to get back to its old, what it was intended to do, which was amphibious assaults. So
Sure.
attack from the sea to the land. We are never really supposed to be these like on the ground, can drop anywhere guys. We were supposed to be this amphibious assault from sea to land and protect the boats.
Hmm.
And so that, yeah, I seemed like that's why they were kind of getting away from it in my time. So my tank battalion time was actually the worst part of my career, because it was just, I mean, it was in 29 Palms. I actually ended up getting in trouble and I got NJP'd, so I was on restriction for a little bit. So that was pretty terrible. Um, that was probably the lowest point of my life. That's when like the severe drinking kicked in,
Yeah. Yeah.
and uh, but then luckily the best thing about that place though is like just happened to have a captain in charge of me that was openly a libertarian.
Mm.
And I remember this. He was from Washington, and I don't know why he was a libertarian, but he was like, it was weird because he would talk about, like, oh yeah, we have the terrorist doing this in Afghanistan and whatever. And then he'll be like, but it's really weird because we gave him money and weapons like 4 years ago.
Right.
And I was like, wait, what? And like, I never heard stuff like that before. And it was just like little nuggets like that. Or I'd be like, wait, we gave them money. Why would we do that? And just stuff like that. And then I remember this one specific story, and it was around the election time. I was in the Marine Corps during the 2016 election, and they sent this ballot to him, and they asked him to mark if he was a Republican or a Democrat, and he wrote on there, and he made like a little box and wrote libertarian and checked that, and then wrote on it, fuck your two-party system, and sent it back. And I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. And then he kind of talked about Ron Paul a little bit. And then once I kind of found out about like Ron Paul and being a libertarian, and like I started at least listening to Gary Johnson, and I mean I voted for the fucking guy, so
right.
I guess Gary Johnson's what got me to libertarianism. But yeah, so like I kind of got more interested that way through like the political means, I guess, is what brought me to it, and then that's kind of how I got into libertarianism. But then by the end of my Marine Corps career, like up until 2017, I was ready to get out. Like my parents, I remember the day that came, my parents actually came out to pick me up, and I was moving to Phoenix, Arizona to go to school at ASU. And my mom never been there, and she wanted to look around the base that day, my last day in. Like once I got my paper to leave the fucking base, my mom's like, oh, I actually want to look around for a little bit. And I was like, no. I was like, you can look around all you want. I'm leaving. I'm not staying on this base another second. And she like was kind of upset about it. And I was like, I'm sorry, but like I don't want to be here, and I'm leaving. Like I'm allowed to leave. I'm fucking leaving. And so we left like 10 minutes later. And yeah, and then I went to Phoenix, Arizona, went to ASU for a little bit.
Yeah. So normally people, if they have anything to, I give them an opportunity to say something about whatever they have going on. But for you, you have a podcast, which you can introduce in a sec, but it's so integral to what drew me to you personally, and to have you on, and then also just it's so integral to your military experience that I thought it would be a good thing to mention now. So yeah, go ahead and just mention that real quick, and kind of what it's about a little bit.
Yeah,
and
for sure. So
your motivations, especially, were a big part of it, I think.
Yeah. So as I was, getting out of the military, kind of getting into these newer libertarian ideas, I started going to ASU, and that is nowhere to discuss libertarian ideas. I mean, it's not like you can't even have the same, like you can't even like debate the cool stuff when you're still arguing over like, the women's wage gap. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on, dude? And I don't even like want to talk about this stuff. Like I'm talking about the fucking budget and the wars, guys. Like I don't know. And so that was just not useful for me. And I took like a critical thinking class where all we did was debate politics in that class, and it was almost a waste of my time. But so what happened is when I got out, I moved in with Luke and a couple other Marines, and we were friends with it was like me, Luke, and our other buddy Nick. He lived with us in Arizona, but then there was like another group of Marines that lived and then right down the road, and we all kind of hang out with each other. And one of them that lived in the other house was named Jared, and
he still is named Jared, right?
Yes, he is still Jared. But no, but we would just we would rant, and it would get deeper and deeper into politics all the time. We all worked together on this construction job. And I mean, that's when get nerdy about it, dude. We were talking about libertarian shit, and then we'd be like, oh dude, did you catch this Tom Woods episode about Irish history? And I don't know, we get nerdy into it. And then there was just a few things that along the way of becoming a libertarian, we couldn't let go of. I know Luke, he always talks about this, but he was hung up on public education for a long time. I was hung up on the military thing. I was like, the military's bad, but we still need it. There's fucking China. Right. I mean, I came from the military and intel and stuff like that, so I kind of knew about that stuff and what their capabilities were and stuff. but we would argue, like, just drinking with each other. We would just argue in the backyard, and I mean, we did this for a long time, and then it got to the point where we like get further and further down the rabbit hole, and we kind of got to the point where we're, I guess, the radicals that we are today. That I was an anarchist, Luke's an anarchist, and Jared was a minarchist, and but we thought that we were the only ones that like thought like this.
Right.
We thought, I mean, we would talk to other vets and stuff, and like they would kind of agree or at least get our point on things. And like, man, we thought we were alone. We didn't think there was anyone, other vets or anyone else that got it. So we were like, dude, let's just start a podcast. And at the time, Jared was kind of at least a friendly fan of I was at the time Friends Against Government podcast, and they kind of let us on, or at least got Jared on there and promoted the podcast. But we started it called Biting the Bullet, and our whole goal was to just talk about our experiences in the military, kind of how fucked up the wars are, and kind of give that atmosphere of like you're back in the smoke pit in the military, that you're just kind of shooting the shit with friends, but
Mm-hmm.
Trying to reach out to anyone thinking about joining the military or anyone that's currently in the military, that that thinks like us too. And to our pleasant surprise, we were able to find, a decent amount of people that actually felt the exact same way we do, and never, I guess they never found someone that was an outlet for them, and we've
Mm-hmm.
been that outlet, which has been really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to a large extent, if the listener cares, your show was a big motivation or an inspiration, I should say, for me starting this. Kind of the same thing that you were saying, just hearing vets and hearing their opinions and whatever they have to say, but um, but from a broader array, because a lot of people just see one small talk, they know one or two people, but to give them the opportunity to hear from a wide array of veterans, that's the goal here. So for what that's worth, um, yeah. So you mentioned, kind of backtrack a little bit. You mentioned like your friendship with Luke and everything and all. Um, a couple questions about that. Did you did you have a wide array of like good friends, or was it just a couple? And then also, how did having those friendships help you, um, I guess, get through the day? Like obviously every day has struggles and everything. What was the benefit of just the kind of the camaraderie of those friendships?
Yeah, so I would say in Okinawa, I had I mean, we would, I had a lot of friends, and that's probably because of the atmosphere of Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for example, in Okinawa, at least when I was first there, we could leave base, but we had to be back on base at like 10 p.m. or something like that.
Sure.
No one could stay overnight unless you special request it, and that shit's a bitch to do. Um, and then you were absolutely not allowed to drink off base. So
Mm.
most Marines didn't. I mean, they would go off base during the day, or I mean, maybe some of the sly ones would go somewhere where they knew they could drink or something like that. But generally speaking, a lot of us just stayed on base and hung out on base with each other. Because and it was kind of expensive to get around the island sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But so I with like a lot of us just that hung, I guess they call us barracks rats. We would hang out and just hang out and like go play baseball or softball um at the fields or something, or like go play we play croquet or grill out, or I don't know, we like make stupid shit up, and there would be like just a huge, I would say like 10 or 12 people were like my good friends that I would hang out with. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we would get like hundreds of people that would just show up to like our like hang out. I mean, it wasn't like we were putting on the
Right.
events or
Right.
anything.
Right.
It was just like a collective, like, hey, let's go do this, let's go do
Sure.
that. So in Okinawa, I really felt like I had a lot closer group net of friends than I probably ever had in my life. But it was most likely due to the fact that a lot of us were constricted to base, because we just wanted to drink and hang out and stuff like
Right.
that. And that definitely helps. In Okinawa, there's like a 14, 15-hour time difference for between me and my family. So it was really hard to talk to them because they'd be going to bed and I'll be waking up, or the
Right.
opposite. And so having like friends, like really good friends, was like probably the best thing that could replace that. Because I mean, there was never like a downtime. I mean, maybe one day your friend's like, "Oh, I got a new video game, I want to play it," so you just go to the next room and be like, "Oh, dude, let's watch a movie or something." Like, I don't know. There was always something to do or someone you can hang out with, and that was honestly great. And there's a lot of those friends, I would consider my best friends. Uh, that like half of them I'm probably still in contact with today on a regular
Mm-hmm.
basis. Those are probably like one of my really good friends, and um, so and 29 Palm or not in Okinawa, that was great, and it was miserable there just because I mean if because like they made a big deal out of things, like if a Marine did something off base and like a DUI, or they got caught drinking, or like whatever, they got in a fight, got arrested.
Right.
I mean, and they made it such a bigger deal because it wasn't like you're just pissing off the locals. You're pissing off, and it's an international incident because you're pissing off the locals in a foreign
Right.
country, and they made
Right.
it seem like it was such a big deal. So anytime that would happen, they would just lock us down, and lockdown would mean like kind of like what we went through, but you can't drink, and at least you're not supposed to. And yeah, they would just restrict us to base, or like only our base. We couldn't go to the other base and visit, or even go out for dinner and then come back. So they would just lock us down, and they would do this like they thought mash punishment was the best way to not like not have these things happen again, which is probably the worst method
Right.
and
Right.
doesn't just makes everyone miserable. So like times like that, it kind of sucked. But yeah, the friends there definitely helped. But then when I went to 29 Palms, we were allowed to like leave base and like you can go do whatever you want when the weekend hits. And 29 Palms is in the middle of nowhere, so like a lot of people would like leave. They would go to San Diego, go to Las Vegas or Phoenix. I mean, all those places are like between 2.5 to like 4 hours away. So usually people would just stay there for the weekend. So
Right.
in 29 Palms, I didn't really have that close of friends in 29. So I kind of felt, at least it was not necessarily harder to cope, but it wasn't like it would just sucked when something happened. There was not that like a group of guys you can go hang out with. Like, it was only like maybe one or two, and
Right.
there wasn't really, if they're gone, then you're just like, I guess I'll play video games by myself. But what was the second part of your question? Did I answer that?
Um. Yeah, just the camaraderie of friendships, and like as you mentioned, when you were by yourself, it was and you had a tough day. It was a little tougher you didn't have anybody to hang out with and shoot with,
Yeah,
or whatever, just yammering around.
yeah.
So
Those days were definitely worse. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. Um. So yeah. So as far as like you mentioned, when you went to South Korea, you did more. You did more like actual planning and like intel stuff. When you were just in Okinawa, did you utilize your MOS, or was it paperwork? What was it?
So
Theoretical
what?
stuff, wargaming, or what?
I mean, pretty much all of it's theoretical when you're wargaming. But
Sure.
but there would be certain circumstances, like there'd be like operations or whatever going on for training events, and they would just need an intel guy there to do whatever. But honestly, a lot of those weren't really. I mean, for me, it was always the workups to them. So like
Mm-hmm.
studying the enemy, studying their weapon systems, figuring out their avenues of approach or whatever, all that. That was cool to do. But when I was actually there at the operation, which I would just be sitting at a computer waiting for news, but the only problem is like the enemy's fake. It doesn't even exist. And it wasn't like they'd be like, oh, they attacked or whatever. Or like we have this, you gotta like study this and put this down and like try to find the trends and like what's happening here. Like they didn't have like real up to date stuff like that. So like honestly, most of the operations I would just sit there and not really do anything. Like there wasn't a lot of training that they implemented for, at least at the lower units. Now, if I was at a bigger unit, that might be a little bit different.
Sure.
But only really times I got to dive into my MOS was like at least that part of it was the workups to the training events. And then most of the time, though, at least for a lot of guys that were intel in the Marine Corps, the other side of it, they would just put on, which was security management. So you just store and inventory the classified material, and then you just make sure like the safes and stuff are up to code and the passwords are right, and
Sure.
you got to change the codes and stuff every once in a while just to keep up with like security purposes stuff. And that's usually like more the admin side for intel guys, and a lot of us got stuck with stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. So in intel, kind of a two-part question. In intel, is there a requirement to be able to read, and if so, how did you overcome that requirement?
Well, intel, I guess. So it's kind of weird. I don't really know exactly, but I know to get in the Marine Corps, you had to get at least like a 32 on the ASVAB, which is not that hard for anyone out there. Basically, most people graduating high school can get that. Now, the GT score, which I really don't know what that means, but that is what determines if I think what I've been told is it monitors your common sense and how quickly you can learn something. So that's what it's supposed to do, at least.
Okay.
And mine was, now I only got like I don't even know, like a 70 something on my ASVAB core. Like it's not like great, but it's not like bad, I guess.
Right, sure.
But my GT score was like over 120, and I guess that's how they determine. Like once my recruiter saw that, he was like, "Oh, you got to do intel." And now I don't really know. I kind of got pushed into it. I didn't really want to do that. But my recruiter made it sound pretty fucking cool, so I was like, okay, I'll do that. But yes, you have to read, and I took reading for Marines, and that's how I overcome it.
Your recruiter, your whole experience, did you get what you anticipated? A lot of people go to the recruiter and they see him as like, hey, this is my guy. He's going to get me in. He's going to set me up. And not everybody has that experience. Some do. Was that your experience? Did you have a great experience? Bad? You were lied to? You were told the truth? What was the deal?
So strangely enough, I probably had the best recruiter that I've ever, at least from the stories I've heard of my friends and other people, because like my recruiter was pretty straightforward. Like he just straight up would just tell me the truth about things. So like I'd ask him about intel, and then what sold me on it is like he's like, there's a lot of job opportunity if you get out of the Marine Corps that you could use with that MOS.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, so that's probably what sold me. But he was straight up told me, he's like, most of the intel dudes I know, they don't deploy, they don't do anything. I'm like, oh, okay, like where's the fun in that? And he kind of sold me more on like, well, you already said you don't plan on staying in, so if that would be kind of like the job you would want, because that would definitely translate for like military contracting or any civilian job working for some government agency would. Like I know a couple of guys that like work, like one guy, I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but it's probably best that we don't. But I know he works for Homeland Security.
Oh, he doesn't talk to you. You may talk to him.
Yeah. I don't know. We both joined from the same town, and we were the same grade, and there's only like 80 kids there, and we both did the same MOS. So we were kind of like, oh wow, so we kind of became like closer because of that. But then I went to Okinawa, he went to California, he got married, had a kid, and I mean, I had kind of kept in touch with him, but then like last I heard, he was working for Homeland Security, and I was like, wow, we went the exact opposite way.
Yeah.
But overall, my recruiter was actually pretty straight up with me.
Sure.
But I was probably in a weird situation only because my dad worked with his brother, so we actually kind of we knew him. Not like we didn't know him that well, but he kind of knew, and he was from my area, and yeah, he was pretty straight up guy with me about everything,
Mm-hmm.
and and I don't know, but he would always he always messaged me on my birthday on Facebook and says happy birthday, man, and he's like a warrant officer in the Marine Corps now, and I'm like, oh, thanks,
Huh.
dude. So
Raw.
yeah, I'm like, cool.
Huh. Um. Yeah, kind of related, but a little bit of a switch. Um. You were obviously enlisted. What's kind of the officer? What's the relationship like between officer and enlisted, in your experience? Just the not only just the good and bad, but also the aspects of it, I guess.
So that's kind of I can
It's
answer
a
that
big question. Take it how you want.
yes. Yeah, so I can kind of answer that in two ways. So the officers that were like directly in charge of me, like the intel officers, um, all of the every single one that I worked for was cool as shit. They they weren't really about like, oh, let's do this like Marine Corps standard stuff. They're like, no, we're here to do work and like you do your job and you go home. Like that's what we're doing.
Okay.
And so I love that mentality, and they were all cool about it. Like, yeah, there was some times where it was like, why are we doing this, sir, or like whatever. But most of the time, in my experience, they were just doing it because they got told to do it. And so my relationship with my officers that I worked under was great. But being an intel guy, a lot of officers from different MOSs in the company or battalion or whatever will come to us for
Mm,
either like a brief on something. So if their guys are getting ready to like go to the Philippines to build fucking schools or whatever, we would give a brief about Philippines and like, hey, there is somewhat of a threat level and like stuff like that.
sure.
Or we get them maps or like what, like I don't know, something they would need something from us. Those times generally were pretty. I would say most of the time it was kind of like a working relationship, and most of them weren't like assholes or mean or anything. But you would get some that would come in there and like just be complete assholes and like I don't know, think that you're stupid or whatever just because you're lower rank or I don't know. I don't really know why, but and sometimes you kind of or they would request something that was just not even possible. Either
Mm,
they were so late in requesting whatever they wanted, or what they were requesting is like, we're not gonna put like all of our resources into this right now. We have other shit going on, and usually like lieutenants and captains were the biggest pains in the ass for shit like that. Um, and then but I got to work. I was in a weird situation where I kind of worked with like the battalion commanders sometimes, or the executive offers sometimes, and I mean most of the time my time with them was pretty good. Um, so like my personal like relationship with officers in the military, like on a personal level, was over generally pretty good. I had it better than. I mean,
okay.
I say this all the time. I had probably the easiest Marine Corps career compared to a lot of people. Um,
Sure.
but then, I would say that like when it would come down to like our company, like the company commander, that's when like the relationship would get
Sure.
funky.
Yeah.
And that's when like I don't know, they would just make us do stupid shit or uh lock us down for whatever reason. Like I don't know, there's a whole bunch of different things that just made me upset. And like, or they would just, instead of like, there's this thing in the military where like no one really volunteers a lot of time for some things. You just get voluntold to do something.
Right.
Like they'll take like, hey, we need like 10 volunteers for this, and like no one raises their hand, and then you just get told to do it. And a lot of times that would happen to me, where especially when you're the lower rank on the totem pole, you just get pulled from your job a lot just because they think they can use you in other
Right.
wherever the Marine Corps. Like I got chow hall duty for a while. I don't know. I like just different things like that, and then I don't know, the officers just, it was just weird because like they would, I don't even know how to explain it. Like it wasn't like they would straight up like talk shit to you, but they're very condescending a lot of the times, and very
Sure.
like kind of sarcastic in a way, where they would say something and yeah, I don't know, but that was generally just with like my company commanders, or maybe the battalion, not really the battalion commanders, or like any of the officers at my work. I had no problem with, but but a lot of them were dumb. So I don't want that to be like that. Just because I had a good personal and working relationship with them doesn't mean like a lot of them they're not as bright as they're led off to be.
Mm.
Um, and that like that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of known pretty much as a thing through the military, is like the newer lieutenants are kind of just, they don't have the experience, but they're an officer, so they have to like play like, oh, I'm in charge, I know what I'm talking about, and a lot of times
Right.
they don't fucking know. And but that's my personal experience, and I know most people most people in the military did not have that kind of relationship. But I was in a situation where there was only me and a sergeant and a lieutenant in Okinawa. And then when I was in 29 Palms, it was me, or it was three lance corporals. I was the corporal, a sergeant, and then an officer. So like I was always in a smaller unit or
Oh, okay.
smaller
Okay.
section. So like it was kind of like you couldn't just be a dick, because we work so closely all the time and with each other like every day, that it's harder to have that like rank structure divide like the Marine Corps kind of wants you to. So it
Hmm.
was kind of a more of like an open working relationship. Like, okay, like you get this done, I get this done. We're all filling billets that we're not even supposed to be in, type situation.
Huh. Um. Yeah. One thing that I found interesting. I think you came up with the phrase that the military is welfare for conservatives, or at
Yes.
least, yeah. And so obviously that's a real like, to anybody who hasn't considered that concept, that's just a real like slap in the face. Not aggressive, but just like a jerk to reality or something. What can you explain what you mean by that? Because that's obviously comes from your experience, um, and reflects what you saw. What kind of what did, now that you have someone's attention by saying that, how do you explain the concept there?
Sure. So, well, the first part is like when everyone thinks about the military, they think like, oh, they're gung ho, they're gonna deploy, go fight in these wars, and like they think like a lot of people, like I happens to me all the time. Like I was just an intel dude, I didn't deploy anywhere, and people think I'm like since I was a Marine, and I don't know if a Marine holds heavier weight, but they think that I fucking saw some shit in Afghanistan or something, and
Right, right.
a lot of people's perception of the military seems to be that way, when the reality is most people in the military will not deploy to the Middle East. Like it's just the numbers don't add up, and most people in the military, I mean, you basically do these like training scenarios, yes, but it's all fake. It's all for nothing. Like, we do a year after year after year. I did, or 2 years in a row, for my experience, I did these two training operations with a tank battalion that no longer exist anymore. So there's no point for us to do that training. And that's kind of like the broader thing. But in generally speaking, like a lot of things that people do every day it's just like made up stuff that we have to do. It's just like they're giving us this made up stuff to meet these requirements that don't even make sense. And the whole time you're working, but it's almost like it's for nothing. It's like it's literally like the government's giving you a job, but the job doesn't really have a task. It doesn't complete an actual task. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
provide anything really to the economy. It doesn't do anything. So it's like these fake made up stuff you have to do, at least most people in the military that do this, and then you get paid 2 times a month, and you get health insurance, and you get, and that paycheck that you get 2 times a month, it happens no matter what. So if you don't do anything, literally don't do
Sure.
anything for 2 weeks, you still get paid. If you Now there is some circumstances where you'll you'll have to work 2 weeks straight, and you'll get paid, but you just get paid the same, so you don't get like overtime or anything like that. That's
Mm.
true, but in the overall scenario is like you're kind of just doing it's like it's not welfare in the sense that like you don't have to do anything, but it's welfare in the sense that you're just doing something that also doesn't provide anything to the economy or anything really for anyone. A lot of the things that we everyone did, and and you get paid for it, and like that's almost all unit, like that's
Hmm.
majority of the military, like that. I have seen it. I worked on a base, and I see what we do and what they have them do. They spend all this money on training and on training for multiple different guys, like up to 1 million people that will never actually use that training for a real life scenario. So
Sure.
if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not if you're not doing anything, I mean, and that's why I would say it's like welfare for conservatives, just because also, I mean, at least my experience, the Marine Corps tended to lean more right. And
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay. What what uh what about the military, or maybe even a moment in time in the military, but what do you think impacted you the most of your years in? Now you're some distance away. What experience was it that either changed you the most, or affected you the most, or just was a memorable experience? I guess those are all similar, but like what
Mhm.
experience in the military did you take away most in your mind?
um so I at the so maybe like so it kind of made me more like, I guess, libertarian in the sense, and what that kind of changed my
Mm,
mind about the military was more like the waste I saw, and like just more of like an economic or funding thing, and just like the massive
sure.
amount of funding, and like seeing that every day. And then this whole, like, I don't know, I grew up in a veteran family. People were very, at least in my community, people were very proud of people that served in the military. And so, like, already by like instantly joining, you got like that satisfaction, or not that satisfaction, but just joining the military before you did anything. You just joined.
Mm, yeah. Yep.
People would like give you this high level of praise. Like, I would get thank you for my service, and like people would say like, "Oh, you're a hero," or like, "Oh, I'd get free stuff some places that I went to, and people would pay for my stuff," and it was like cool. I did, I enjoyed like this praise, but I like at first I was like, man, I don't, but I haven't even like done anything yet. It's like I understand you're praising me, and I understand like I'm in a cool fighting organization, but I haven't even like done anything.
Right. I
And there
just
was
signed some papers. That's it.
yeah, I signed some papers. I got yelled at for 3 months, and I slapped an EGA in my hand. Like that's all I did. And like most people's mentalities, like my experience was like, "Oh, you graduated boot camp, you did it. You're a Marine, you did it." And I was like, "But the boot camp wasn't like really that hard. I mean, in my opinion, you get yelled at, and it's kind of stressful. But like overall, it's not like the hardest fucking thing I've ever done, I guess." And then so like that feeling of like followed with me all through the military is like I'm getting this praise and stuff, but I don't want it right now. I don't want you to praise me, because in like my own head I'm like, I haven't done anything to deserve this. And going through the military, like we everyone, like at least from my experience in the Marine Corps, a lot of people were deployment chasing. So they're trying to get on those deployments so they
Sure.
can go and
That's why
go
they're
and fight.
there. Yeah.
Yes, that's why most people, from what I've seen in the Marine Corps, they do their best to try to weasel their way into getting on deployment. And it's really hard to do, but that's what they try to do. And since and I always thought in my mind that if I just got one of those deployments, it could validate all this like love and appreciation that I got.
Hmm.
And I like that was my mindset going through the military. Is like, if I just get a deployment, go out and actually make a difference or whatever, this validation will like it'll validate all this praise that I get, and it'll make it feel like I actually did something. And I never got that opportunity, but and, and then I would talk to guys that did deploy, and I would always ask them questions like how what it was like, what you did, and a lot of them came to the same conclusion that I had without going is like, yeah, but I didn't really do anything. Like I never did anything over there. Like, yeah, we did this or that, but like, I mean, a lot of the guys that I talked to is like, dude, we just didn't. It wasn't like worth it. Like, I don't have that validation, and I think my time coming out of the military was like, I think it was like this idea of me chasing, because like once you join, you kind of get that praise, everyone kind of respects you or whatever, but like I never got that like I deserve this and like I actually earned this type of like feeling, and
Sure.
that weighed over me for like a long time, even when I got out of the Marine Corps and I was coming into like the ideas of liberty. It still like waned over me, like, man, I just, maybe if I did something different, or maybe if I actually, tried to stay in and make a difference or something. And I don't know, but that was probably like the hardest thing to realize, was like, even if I got that deployment, I probably would have never had that validation I was searching for.
What would you say it kind of felt like you were claiming false valor? I mean, that's a term that's in the public zeitgeist a bit, but where people were saying thank you, and you're like, I didn't do anything, but you're still thanking me. Would that be kind of accurate?
Yeah, yeah. It would kind of feel like like almost like the stolen valor
The
thing.
stolen.
Like
That's
I'm
it. That's
getting,
it. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting the praise, but I was like, I didn't do anything though. Like you're praising me for not, like, it'd be like on a sports team. If you're
Mm-hmm.
just the bench player and you never played in the game, and some
Right.
like your team won at Friday night, and you're going out for fucking pizza or something, and people are like, "Oh, good job out there," but you never you never got in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. One question I do try to ask consistently is, if a kid, whatever age, 18 or younger, was to come to you and say, "Hey, I really want to join the military. I'm thinking about it," and they said, "Hey, do you have any advice?" What would you say? And I intentionally really open. What just how would you advise them? Period.
If so, are you asking me like before they sign the papers, or is it after they're already in, like they're
Both.
already
Sure, both.
dead set? Okay,
Both.
so before
Because
I
I know
would,
you have different answers for for those two
yes,
situations.
yes. Well, like surprisingly enough, I've been asked, like I've been told that I've convinced some couple teenagers that they're not joining the military after listening to my podcast, and then I've been asked by people that have already like just joined. I was like, man, what do I do?
Mm,
So, um, so for the first part, like I would try to convince people that like there's so much better options than joining the military. And I know that when you come out of high school, it seems like your only options are college or the military. And like like I'm not saying you should go to college either, but the military, you'll never find what you're searching for. Now, um, you, like I can't deny that I probably found the best friends of my life, and
hmm.
that's something that I do hold value to, and maybe in some sense I am thankful of the Marine Corps putting me in those situations where I got those friends. Um, but I was gone away from my family for 5 years being in the military, and I hated that. I missed weddings. I missed cousins having kids. I missed funerals, which is probably the hardest one.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and like, and I never, and at least in my experience, I never got that validation I was searching for. So at least if I did miss those things, I could be like, well, I did it for the greater good or a better cause. But I never had that validation. So then it really weighed on me that, like, man, I think I just wasted 5 years of my life, and I missed all these events. I mean, 5 years to an 18-year-old, man, that's that's like
A big
more
chunk.
than a quarter of my life. So I like that was and that's where I would come at it with is like I don't know. I don't think you need to join the military to find some sort of validation or find your place in the world. I think you're better off staying closer to your family. I truly believe that there's so much more better options out there um, that can get you a career of some sort, and you don't need to go through the military to achieve those things.
Hmm.
Um, you want me to answer for someone that's in the
Yeah.
military?
Say that either say they already had signed, or they listened to you say that and said, "Well, I don't care what you say, I'm going to join," but for some reason they still listen to your advice, or say they already had signed, or
Cool.
or they're a typical
So
18-year-old that doesn't care what you say.
yes, yeah.
I
I mean,
mean, let's be
hell,
real.
if so, if someone came to me, even if I give him my advice that I gave them when I was 18, I'd probably still sign the contract. Like I was just so set on it, and from my experience growing up, it was what I wanted to do and what my dad did and what his dad did. So it was like, that's what I thought I had to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but 19-year-old me, when I'm been in the Marine Corps for about a year, I would say that, the best thing to do is not isolate yourself. It's to try to find friends and, um, it's not like all
Hmm.
those guys that I was friends with in Okinawa that we were like, we'd always get along. There was plenty of times we did not get along. I mean, we were a fucked up family of misfits and, just from different political backgrounds, culturally backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
just on like all there's a bunch of different differences between us. But the best thing is to just be social, hang out with friends, and do your best to keep in contact with your family as much as you can. Because like I don't know, a lot of like when I first joined, like I didn't really keep in contact that well with my family as I probably could have,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like my first time out of the house. I'm kind of like I'm doing my own
I'm a
thing.
man.
I don't need my parents, like shit like that. Like, and I know I have decent amount of regrets because of that
Mm.
mindset thinking. And you know, um, even if your parents aren't always the easiest to talk to, they understand you more than you think you know. And
Yeah. Yep.
and my family has always been there for me for anything that I ever needed. So try to keep in contact. Don't get married. Uh, do not get married when you're in the military. There's a billion reasons why you should not get married, but don't do that. Lay low. Just do your
Hmm.
job. You don't really need to go out if you're hate it so much and you're going to get out. you know, Lay low, do what you need to. Great gray man mentality, and it's kind of easy to get away with that. Now there's going to be times that suck, and it's probably going to be like one of the worst times of your life, but it's in a weird way. It's like what the gay community when they put out that messaging about like kids when they come out of the closet and they're like it gets better because they'll have terrible times in high school
Mm.
being gay,
Mm-hmm.
but then like these rich celebrity people that are gay were like don't worry it gets better. Well, I have the same advice. Once it gets 1,000 times better. I can't even explain to you how much better it got for me personally, for my relationship with my friends, and even my relationship with my family once I got out of the military. So,
Hmm.
even when you feel like it's the lowest of the low, like uh, it definitely gets better. And I understand if you're in the situation where it's literally the worst time of your life. But if you just fight through it and lay low, when you get out, you'll be pleasantly surprised with what comes on the outside.
Hmm. Yeah. You just sparked a thought that you were talking about all the friends you had in Okinawa and everything, the diversity, and even though uh even though you did have issues and fought and whatnot, what was it that enabled you to have that unity? Even in the midst of the difficulty, even in the midst of, as you said, such diverse racial backgrounds, political backgrounds, all that stuff. How? Because nowadays people are like, oh, well, we just need unity, and you're like, well, we kind of made it happen. What was the driver there? And I don't know.
Well,
Maybe it's not an easy answer.
yeah, I don't exactly know, but if I would have to guess, I would say that, I mean, not generally speaking, we, like, in the Marine Corps, I mean, we talked about, like, I mean, drunkenly would talk about politics or whatever's going on
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, but generally speaking, like, honestly, for us in the military, it didn't matter. We didn't have a say in what was going on. So even if we followed the news and everything, like, it's not
Sure.
like we can make a difference. We didn't, when whoever's in charge, we're following fucking orders, so it didn't matter for really. And I think a lot of it that brought people together was just how higher ups would treat other people sometimes. So when I was in uh,
Sure.
Okinawa, our company commander and our first sergeants, like, I don't know, they went on a tirade for a while, and um, it was always like in this weird dichotomy of like sergeant and below, and I think the more they would try to like punish us and make us do like dumb games, or we're field daying on a like again or whatever we have to do to get punished. I think what brought us more together was like us going through that crap together, and it was like we're kind of like on an equal playing field almost, where it was like an enemy of my. It's not like these people were
Mm.
ever like my enemy or anything, but it was like, hey, we're both being fucked over by this guy right now, and you would just openly complain about it and stuff like that, and I think people like came closer when your abuser is abusing multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
The abusers can like come together and be like, wow, this fucking sucks, dude, this is terrible. And I think, honestly, I think that kind of is what brought us like so close together, and we were able to tolerate each other, and I mean, and jokes. Like, honestly, the comedy in the military, it was like that's
Mm.
all. Everyone was like trying to make each other laugh, and like that was probably a huge part of it too. Is like, there's no like there's a lot of downtime, a lot of time where you're
Mm.
kind of sitting around not doing anything. You, I mean, you spark up conversations and start talking about like the dumbest things and the goofiest things in the world, and just joking around with each other, trying to make each other's laugh while you're all in this like miserable situation. And I think that really, really helps, and brings people together, is just
Mm-hmm.
laughing about being angry and laughing about the same thing is what brought us together.
Yeah. Huh. Shared emotions or something.
Yeah,
to sound
probably an easier way to
non-marine.
explain it. Yeah, probably an easier way to say it.
Huh. Yeah. Any. Well, okay. One more thing. You mentioned. Let me think how to frame this. It's probably well known, I would think, in the general public about the effects and the amount of alcohol that you were talking about drinking, and especially like when you have a hard day and there's no buddies around, you really hammered it. What I guess I don't really have a question phrased about it, but do you have any thoughts on that? Just the concept of the level to which alcohol is used to deal with stress in the military. I mean, I'm sure it's the same around the world, even in civilian populations. But I guess you have any thoughts on that?
Uh,
And actually, I would add the effect, the overall effect that has on the soldier or marine, the individual.
um, to be honest, I'm not. So yeah, like the levels of drinking and the consumption of alcohol is the level that I've never seen after the
Okay, yeah,
military. Um, like there and like a lot of people did. I mean, there's plenty of people that underage drink, especially in Okinawa. It still happened in 29 Palms, but in Okinawa when we're like all locked on base together, um,
Yeah.
like that was what there. I mean, that's probably maybe not the best way to cope with things, but it's definitely what we all used, and we would like find excuses to drink. I mean,
Sure.
we like had like I mean, pretty much if it's a Friday or a Saturday, we're going ham. And sometimes we would make excuses to drink on a Monday or a Tuesday. And I mean, there was a time that we drank every day for a little bit. And um, I don't think it's a good way to do it, but it was probably just something for us to kind of like we all did in common. I think that's kind of like the mentality, and plus being in the Marine Corps, it kind of like I don't know how long it's been part of the culture, but it was kind of
Oh,
already
yeah.
embedded in the culture when we got there. And it's just
Right.
like, hey, you're a Marine, you got to learn how to drink, and like you got to shotgun all these beers for whatever fucking reason to prove that you're a real Marine or something like that. And I think it's the type of people that do join the military are like to try to fit into that culture as much as they can.
Mm.
And because that's what brought us together. It wasn't like all of our cultural backgrounds were different, so we
Right.
had to like kind of go into the military culture to have things in common with your people around you. It and
Hmm.
uh, so I think that is kind of like one of the main reasons is it was embedded in the culture before we got there. But I mean, it was we all partook in it, and I mean, we would pretty much openly admit. Now, I used to say it thinking I was saying it in like a joking way, like, "Oh yeah, I'm an alcoholic." Um, but it wasn't until I was a couple years removed when I look back and I'm like, "Holy shit, man! I really was an alcoholic.
Right.
I had a problem." And
Hmm.
um, what was the second part of your question? I forgot.
No, that was mostly it. Just
Okay.
about how it affected, or the effect it had, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely raised people's aggression. So
Mm. Oh yeah.
that's when I mean, there would be times, I think a lot of times too, is people in the military tend to hold their emotions in. And then when they're drinking, that's when their emotions come out. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that comes out with people breaking down, crying about something. Sometimes that comes out in more like anger. And I mean, that is pretty typical. People start
Yeah.
fighting each other. Um, those, I mean, I'm sure there's other ways that people would, their emotions would come out when they're drinking, but there was always something. There was always someone that, something, and then like it's weird, but the military, at least the Marine Corps, was like, we did this stupid shit, and as long as it wasn't like too stupid, it could just be like, oh, hey man, sorry, I drunk too much. Yeah, who cares, dude? And we just move on and never talk
Right.
about that, which was probably
Right.
not good. I don't know, but you just move on. And yeah, I think that is, I think that's one of the reasons is like it would also give people like kind of the excuse, like they can say like when they're letting their emotions out or their problems out, they can be like, oh, I was drunk, my bad. And you would
Sure.
never really want to say you were sober when you would break down crying or get in a fight with your best friend or something like that.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. Well, awesome. Dude. Thanks for doing this and dedicating the time and coming on. You mentioned the podcast. Anything you want to promote before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm Typo. Uh, I'm on Biting the Bullet with, I think Luke was maybe your previous guest or before, but
Yeah.
Me and
Yeah.
Luke, we run Biting the Bullet, just a podcast we started to talk to other veterans and give them a place to like kind of hang out in the smoke pit again. We range all the time. Sometimes we're a little bit more, we try to be funny and try to talk about like some serious situations and like try to put a spin on it. Try like, because sometimes, I mean, at least for me, is like sometimes there's a lot of things it's like kind of hard to talk about. It's like so serious. So
Yeah.
if you don't
Mm-hmm.
go into it in like
Yep.
kind of like a comedy mindset, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to get get out how you feel about something. So we try to do that, and we're pretty big proponents of like anti-war, and that's kind of the ideas that we try to bring more to the veteran community is what we like to do. And you can find us at bitingthebulletpod.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
I like it, dude. Yeah, thank you, dude.